And now inflation is like at least even at this exact moment, it's 3.25.
So even investing in that safe investment, you're losing money.
Correct.
Because your dollar is worth less over time.
So they're taking losses, and then they have assets they can't liquidate because of the bond. So insurance companies as a whole, like the pressure, that's why we're seeing such an increase in rates over the last couple of years.
Welcome to another episode of The Den, brought to you by the Knox Fox Real Estate Group. Hi, my name is Eric Whitener, broker owner of the Knox Fox Real Estate Group, and today my guest is none other than Jared Davidson, branch manager of the Knoxville branch of Meridian Insurance. Jared, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Let's just get right into it. What is Meridian Insurance? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, great question. We're an independent insurance agency, kind of long story short. So we do auto, home, commercial insurance, and life as well. We do not do, so how people like what we don't sell would be like Medicare or health insurance.
Okay.
But pretty much everything else in the insurance sphere we do, as far as that goes.
Awesome. So I'm excited about this show for a couple of reasons, because we're going to do a little twist and turn. Obviously, if you listen to the show, you listen because we like to talk about stuff, community-wise and housing-wise. And so Jared and I got to talking, and one thing that I'm from outside of the state, right? I'm from Florida. And in Florida, people are very transient. They don't live in one area necessarily very long. But you've lived in the Powell area for how long now?
20 years.
20 years. So that is a long time. Considering you're not that old, that's a good chunk of your life you lived in Powell. Right. So we're gonna have a little mixture of this conversation, we're gonna talk some insurance. We're gonna talk about what that looks like from your perspective, but then we're also gonna talk about what it's like living in Powell, the community of Powell, raising a family in today's economic scenario, which is challenging at best.
Right.
So anyways, everybody just pay attention, because we're gonna have, I think, a pretty in-depth conversation. But yeah, so let's circle back around to insurance. I know that okay, so you're a broker,
right?
And so I think most consumers are so exposed to the non-brokerage model, the captive model, right. the State Farms, the Allstates, those kind of models, mainly from an advertising perspective.
Yeah,
because they do a lot of advertising.
For sure.
Your business though is really more, correct me if I'm wrong, but word of mouth and networking and referral based.
Correct. So I'm on 100% referral based. I don't do any outside advertising. Google, obviously Google reviews and SEO, but that's, again, nothing paid as far as that goes. So kind of big thing with what we do. So something that's confusing for people when you're like, oh, I'm a broker, independent agent, or we don't charge any additional fees. We're paid commissions by the insurance companies. I literally had someone ask me that, like, so is there an additional fee on top of this? They're trying to figure out what the deal is. They pay us a percentage of whatever the premium of the policy is. So that's something for people to know, just as an education.
Which is how pretty much all insurance people, whether you work for, say, State Farm or...
Correct. Yeah, yes. Correct. So there's no additional fee for the service. That's really important for people to know. So that's a huge benefit. And then the other side, you mentioned I had kids, so the toy where there's all the different shapes and the kids have to match. So that's really kind of what an independent agent does. They're trying to find the carrier or the company that's the best fit for the client. That's the goal. The best coverages for the best price.
Yeah, and we, and I've heard we're obviously we're in the same networking group. Which, by the way, if you ever want to come to a great networking group, we're in a BNI organization called NRG Energy, and so we have a State Farm agent in there, and he's talked about how there's certain things that State Farm is really good at. Right? Like their pricing is really competitive in certain aspects. But then on the flip side, not in others.
Sure.
So with that being said, if you're with in pros and cons to everything. So if you're with State Farm or you want to be with State Farm and you have one of those scenarios, then you're going to pay a higher rate than you could somewhere else.
Correct.
Where you have the ability with multiple insurance companies to say, okay, this one's not competitive. This one's got a better pricing for the same policy.
Right. Or gives them the coverages that they're looking for specifically. I mean, State Farm is a great company for sure. You mentioned them; they're for sure a great company, no doubt, and do a great job. But again, there's scenarios where they're just not the best fit.
Yeah,
for a client.
And that's, I think, just something key for people to know, because I know that as a real estate agent, when you're helping somebody buy a house, or one of the main things about buying a home is that fixed rate, right? We could take advantage of, say, a 15 to a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. The only two things in your payment that can change from that point on are your taxes and your insurance.
For sure.
And so, like, there sometimes comes a time where hey, my insurance has gone up, or well, I mean, that's the big thing I think a lot of people are feeling right now is insurance has gotten more expensive.
Right.
And the ability, though, to say, okay, well, yeah, this was a good carrier for you. Now this one may be a better fit.
Correct. Yeah.
So the ability to try to keep maybe that cost contained as much as possible,
Sure.
and that may be just and yes, and nothing against like the State Farms and the Allstates, and because they're massive insurance companies, and they have a big network of people.
And they've got some deep pockets.
And they got some deep pockets.
That helps them for sure.
And so there's definitely there's pros and cons to everything. I just think that because there's not a whole lot of marketing out there for it, I don't think a lot of people understand that there's still an insurance broker out there.
Right.
And that you can, I highly recommend people meeting face to face with an insurance agent and really going over what they have. There's nothing more expensive than cheap coverage that doesn't cover your claim.
Well, there's two pieces. So you kind of mentioned some stuff. I mean, what's happening in the market, what I'm seeing, what we're experiencing. So the statistics are, different people are stating that over 70% of people are shopping their insurance at this exact moment. Like literally, like it came out earlier in the year as a big article in the insurance world. People are all paying attention to it, and we're feeling it for sure. Everybody's looking because the cost is going up, because insurance companies are experiencing the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's enough that people don't. Okay, so the way insurance companies look at it, they're obviously for-profit organizations.
Right.
They look at loss ratio. So what was happening right at the pandemic? Remember, we all got the checks because we're driving less, so that everybody felt like they needed to send it a refund. Well, within 6 months, the loss ratio on auto insurance was through the roof. It was over 100%. That means for every dollar they brought in, they were spending over $1 in claims, which isn't great.
Right.
And then on the home side, really the last couple of years, they're experiencing it on the home insurance side, where like there are companies out there that were experiencing $1.40. So for every dollar they brought in, they were paying out $1.40 in claims.
Yeah.
Which cannot be sustained long. Which another piece that people don't realize. So insurance companies, when they have profit, invest that profit into certain asset classes that are regulated. One of them being bonds, which if you guys were paying attention with all these banks, part of the problem was they had bonds, which were supposed to be a safe investment, but their interest rate was like a 0.25, and now inflation is like at least even at this exact moment, it's 3.25.
So even investing in that safe investment, you're losing money.
Correct.
Because your dollar is worth less over time.
So they're taking losses, and then they have assets they can't liquidate because of the bonds. So insurance companies as a whole, like the pressure, that's why we're seeing such an increase in rates like over the last couple of years. So what I try to do is I'm as far as bringing it down practically.
So hold on, you're saying it's not just because they're greedy?
Yes, exactly.
They're actually trying to like make a profit and run a business.
Correct. So
one other thing on that people got to realize is that in the last couple of years, not only has things have just gotten more expensive, So you have to expect. So let's just say you have tree falls, takes out part of your roof. Now you have roof damage, you have water damage, you
Right.
have all this damage. Well, the cost to repair is astronomical
Correct.
compared to what it was just a short period of time ago. So they're adjusting for all of those factors,
Correct.
so that they can do the things that they said they're going to do, so that they can have the money to physically write the check.
And when you explain that to somebody, when they realize, like, okay, so you put new flooring in your house, how much do you think more expensive was it to do it now than it would have been 3 years ago?
Yeah.
People are like, when you kind of break that down, they realize and they understand what's
But
going
it's a
on.
hard pill to swallow when all of a
Yes.
sudden you get the renewal and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
why'd this jump?
Yes. Correct.
I didn't have a claim.
Which, as their agent, I don't want their rates to go up. I want it to stay the same forever. I want them to be happy, and then everybody's good. And then when claims times come, we pay out, make sure everything's cool. I help them walk through the process, make sure that they're happy. But kind of full circle, like, so I want to make sure they have the right coverage, and I'm also trying to meet them in a budget. So I'm working both angles, and I try to explain it to people. Here's what you're looking at. This is what this coverage does. This is how much this coverage costs.
Yeah.
And let them weigh it out and help them make a decision. This is what it means. Now, there's some coverages I wouldn't take off, like, period. It's like you'll find somebody else that's fine that'll be willing to do that for you. But for the most part, I'm trying to work both angles. I'm trying to help them get in their budget as well as give them the coverage they need.
Well, and that's the thing. There's a fine line between trying to get. That's what I said. There's no such thing, I think, as cheap insurance, right? There's cheap insurance. If you get that price down to where you're like, okay, I'm happy with that, but you've cut coverage to do it, or you've left yourself exposed.
Sure.
Then, when that moment, if something were to happen, now you're paying out of pocket for all of that. So basically, all the money you paid the insurance company was for naught.
Right.
So to me that's very expensive. Like it's like vanity coverage. I'm just doing it to say I've got it.
Now the other side of that too is, and there's some people that go into shop where their current policy, for instance, one thing that's happening with insurance companies is they're trying to mitigate losses. I mean, this is not just one company. This is many. Are going to actual cash value on roofs, which means your roof is paid at a depreciated value, which is not ideal. It's not what I would like to see. So, meaning if you have a 30-year roof, again, let me break that down further. 30-year roof, if it's 15 years old, they have a schedule. They depreciate that down, and then literally it's part of your policy. You can view it and see it. Well, it's like you have replacement costs now. I can save you $200, but your roof will be actual cash value.
Yeah.
No. Don't do that. That's not a good idea.
Right.
Let's keep that. Now, some people, it's not an option. It's like if the roof's old enough, it's coming. It's happening. It's not great. It's not what I want to see, but it's part of the reality. And I think it's hopefully weather. Knock on wood, we have some good weather years when that starts to mitigate. But if we have any major weather events, we're going to continue to see that.
Yeah, things like hailstorms.
Correct.
Windstorms.
Correct.
The stuff that causes that kind of damage.
Right.
It doesn't help. I mean, we've seen it in the news where, big insurance companies are pulling out of a lot of states because for a bunch of reasons. I mean, but one is the amount of claims that they're having.
Right.
And then the cost of doing business in those states.
Another perspective is even the small carriers. So what we've experienced more in Tennessee isn't the large carriers. We've seen the smaller carriers either that have pulled that, like insurtech companies, like some companies like Branch. It's not a big deal, but what's good about those guys is that they do put pressure on the bigger guys. Mm-hmm. They help keep their rates low. Well, they've pulled out entirely. We've had some that have lost their reinsurance, which is the insurance companies have insurance to try to, and because their costs have gone up on the reinsurance. They just completely pulled their homeowner product entirely. So there's a lot of pressures going on, a lot of moving parts, as far as that goes for sure.
So the bottom line, and I think this is going to kind of play into the rest of our conversation. Right. We get into other stuff. Is we need stability.
Right.
We need things to chill out for a while. We need things to not get more expensive, and we need things to not blow up all the time, right? Like, I mean,
It's true.
that's big. So that we could just have a period of stability, and everybody can really reassess and feel comfortable. I
Right.
think that's the biggest thing in a lot of these markets, especially when you're trying to mitigate risk, is it comes down to how comfortable you are, because these are insurance companies are for-profit businesses.
Right.
They're definitely not for loss businesses.
Right.
And so they won't do something if they don't feel they can't make some money off of it. And so yeah, it's just really interesting. So um, how did you get to not only like get into insurance,
Sure.
but also make it? I mean, branch manager sounds like a pretty nice little title.
Yeah, it's cool. So, yeah, sometimes no, it's great, honestly. So I got insurance. It was about 12 years ago. I was fixing to get married, and I was looking. I was in a sales gig. It wasn't great. They changed commissions. Never great when you're in sales. And someone said, "Hey, there's this insurance agency over here that's looking to hire." And never really didn't know a lot about insurance at the time, but I jumped in 12 years ago, and it was a great place to start. I learned a lot about insurance there. Quoted a lot of insurance, which was an awesome opportunity, really across the country. But then wasn't the right vehicle. I actually got out of insurance entirely for like 6 months. And you mentioned BNI. I was in BNI representing a different organization. That wasn't working out either. A guy from Meridian was in that same BNI with me. And he stopped me and goes, "Hey, you have your insurance licenses, right?" And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he goes, "Well, how do you like the company you're with now?" I wasn't going to talk bad about him and BNI representing him. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's great, wonderful." And he's like, "Okay, well, if you ever want to get back in insurance, my boss would love to talk to you." I said, I surprised him. I'm like, what is he doing tomorrow?" And he was just like, he's like, "I don't know. Let me call you." And he's like, "Yeah, let's meet for lunch." That was Wednesday. Thursday, met him for lunch. Friday, I had a job and I was working for Meridian. So
That's
the rest is history. It's going great.
So you've been there. You said about 12 years now.
7 years.
7 years. Oh, 7 years. Okay. No, that's awesome. Other than homeowners and autos and like what is called personal lines.
Yeah.
You do
Commercial lines.
do commercial,
Yeah.
which is what you in our group is what you represent and talk a lot about.
Correct.
One thing that we've seen a lot of lately, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it as the economy deals with, higher prices and potentially maybe even job loss coming in the future, is people getting into starting their own businesses. We especially see it in the trades, handymen,
Right.
lawn maintenance companies.
Sure.
Even, shout out to my brother. He just bought himself a lawnmower and a trailer, and
Going to town,
he's
man.
going to town, doing everything he can to get ahead.
Right.
Well, all of that again opens up, liabilities. You gotta have your insurance coverage, especially to get
Right.
jobs. You have to have, depending on your situation, maybe workers' comp.
Right.
So tell us a little about what do you see, especially in like the trade, because I definitely like to speak to the trades, because those are people that's self-employed small business owner.
And I'd say the commercial side, the trades and service companies are what I do most of. Again, the biggest thing for those guys is again, a lot of times when they're starting out, is again cost. They're price sensitive. Again, you're walking them through. It's educational. A lot of times when you're starting out, you don't know.
Right.
You don't know anything. Like, why would I need that? What does that pay for? They don't understand the coverages and what it means for them. So that's kind of the biggest thing. I feel like when I do like helping guys that are starting off, because I could be educational, walk them through, help them understand what's going on, what they're getting coverage for, why they're buying certain coverages, why they maybe this coverage may be something they add in the future, depending on where they're at, like how far along. If he has 10 lawns versus if he has 90 lawns,
Right.
You may want to look at different coverage. You know what I mean? At that point, at different coverage amounts. So anyway, so that kind of helping people as far as that goes. So in the trade side, again, it's just helping them understand what they're getting and why they're getting, and then providing good service. You would be shocked at how many insurance companies, like, they ask for, because they don't, a lot of times in the trades, like you said, in order to get jobs and get paid for jobs, they have to provide proof of insurance.
Right.
Well, it's amazing how many people won't send that out for like 2 weeks, and so they're waiting on their check. They need that to get paid, you know, and it's tough. So anyway, that's kind of the goal.
So what you're saying is you try to be very proactive in that and make sure they get what they need when they need it, so that they can keep the wheels turning.
Right on.
I think the one thing, you know, I obviously know a lot of people in the trades, and I've dealt with a lot of you know, that handyman sort of classification deal. I've seen, and you're the expert in this, so correct. But if I get my insurance and it's like, what do you do? Well, I lay tile. I'm a tile person. And then later you're over there, you know, framing a door or a wall or something.
Right.
Your insurance may not cover something that happens there.
Correct. And it depends, especially there are some. So you mentioned earlier advertising, man. Like the worst part about my job is that obviously I'm in insurance, so I talk about insurance all day, and obviously Google's listening.
Yeah.
So like if I'm trying to watch a YouTube video, I'm gonna get like 18 advertisements for insurance companies. It's like, oh, good, great. So you know, I get to hear about it even when I'm not trying to think about insurance. So anyway, so some of these companies that advertise a lot, that are like, oh, you know, online only, they really have a lot of exclusions. So that's the big thing to watch for. Now, some, like a handyman, it's a really broad class code. There's a lot of stuff that would cover.
Right.
You know, right? But you're right. Like some guys, oh, I only do, you know, flooring. But then it turns out they're, you know, constructing barns or whatever. I mean, you hear some crazy stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm also doing welding now. It's like, well, that's...
You gotta tell your insurance agent, make sure you're covered, because
it's not in the same ballpark there, man. Well, it's not even close.
Well, I think people don't realize is they think, well, I've got insurance. Like, and I know some of these specific classifications will have like a lower rate. So I know some people are maybe trying to game the system a little there. But the problem is then when you game the system like that, when you have an issue. Correct. Right, like you're just not covered.
That's it.
You know, and I think they feel like maybe they are nonetheless, like it's a trick.
Correct, or they, you know, man, it's crazy. Maybe it's for tax purposes or some other thing they have going on. They're just like, oh yeah, I was doing a DBA, like their name was their personal name, doing business as, you know, fill in the blank construction. And it's like, I decided now I'm an LLC. It's like, don't let me know, nothing, no idea what's going on. It's like, well, I mean, you're giving the company grounds to not pay for the claim. You know what I mean? It's a little bit scary. It's like how fast and loose they can be. So it's like I try to slow them down a little bit. Let's not be as like that. It's like,
I think that's very important. That's why it's important to be in a situation where you can talk to, you know, we're both in quote unquote sales.
Right.
But the world's changed.
Correct.
Right? Like I can't sell a house to anybody who doesn't want one.
Right.
Right? And I can't sell them a house they don't want. Right? I just can't. The days of selling ice to an Eskimo are over. Right?
Yeah.
We now, to be relevant in today's world, have to be advisors. Mm-hmm. Right? Our worth is built in the knowledge that we bring to the table to help our clients navigate the landscape.
Right.
Right. So, you know, in my world, it's, you know, hey, you're interested in buying a house. Okay, so we need to get you with a lender. We need to find out what the right loan product is for you. We need to get you with an insurance agent. We need to get all these pieces together so you're prepared and you know what the cost is going to be. And then we negotiate through, like, this is the things you can expect through the process.
Right.
All right. And these are, hey, we're at this certain point. A good advisor is one who will say, hey, I don't want you to go through with this. I think it's a bad deal.
Right.
Right. And that's what you want.
Correct.
And people need to slow down when it comes to these major items and talk to their advisor. If you can't just pick up the phone and talk to somebody or meet them at the office, then you're probably getting a lot of information or not getting enough information to properly handle the process.
Which again, people want everything go to online and tech, whatever. Like that's, to me, that's the value of knowing someone local in the community, like what you do, like yourself, that can never, no tech giant is ever going to be able to replace. Period. End of story.
I mean, let's be honest. In today's world, can you trust what you get online? Can you trust, like, I'm not going to fill out an application for insurance online and assume that whatever's on the backside gave me the coverage I need to protect me.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, it doesn't care.
And just the class codes itself, like, so, like, we're talking about in the insurance world, like, you're painting using a sprayer versus not. There is a difference. And sometimes you don't know the difference when you're just a dude. You're just trying to find. And some class codes, they don't say what they are, but this is what this business would fit into. Like I know a guy, tree service. Well, like the way that it's worded is not exact. It's like pruning, and it says other stuff like that. And he goes, "Well, is this the right class code?" It's like, yeah, man. I've done the work. I've done the due diligence. I've talked to the underwriters. I've verified. I've explained what your operations are, and this is covered. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And my name's on it.
Yeah.
If something bad goes down, it's on me. So.
And here's the thing: you better believe that if you don't spend time on the front end doing your due diligence or talking with your person, when it comes to claims time, the insurance company is going to do their due diligence on what they're paying. Are they paying? Like, again, their job, it's twofold. Yes, it is to cover and pay claims at claims time. The other part is to make money. Right? So if all of a sudden they're like, hey, this is the coverage you have, it doesn't cover that.
Right.
They're not going to pay the claim.
Exactly.
They're not going to be just like, oh, here, have a few bucks. Like, we hope things are good. So it's very important stuff. And I think that's why it's great having, again, relationships in the community. That's what I love about, the type of networking organization we're in.
Right.
To be able to get this kind of information and to let people know, especially younger folks.
Right.
Who are maybe more online first, right? Everything is on their phone. Maybe they're getting information from, say, social media sources or Google's. Now we're going to start asking ChatGPT questions to see what kind of answer. The reality is when you start going down those paths, you're going to get all sorts of varying answers and all sorts of different stuff. You really need to talk to an advisor.
And another thing that people talk about too, I think I kind of bring it around is like everybody has, people like to have a side hustle now. Because, there's TikTok videos of dozens and dozens of side hustles. And we were joking around about one recently that we could tell a lot of people have jumped into. Obviously, some sort of social media pushed it as far as that goes, which is great. But sometimes you need to stop, and that side hustle can also still have liability. Like, I don't need to get any insurance because it's just my side hustle. Depends on what you got going on, man. Let's talk about it. Let's work through it. You know what I mean?
Speaking of, so side hustles, my brother sent me this, I think it was a TikTok video. And
best things that all start on TikTok, for sure.
Well, this one cracked me up because I don't know where this guy was, but his whole idea was you find a neighborhood, say 300 homes in it, and he's like, the one where they have got trash service, say Monday the trash is getting picked up. He's like, you go around and you tell everybody, hey, I'll pull your trash can out for like $2, right? And he's like, so $2, 300, like I can go in a day and pull all these trash cans, and I can pull these trash cans back for him for, and he's coming out, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you make it sound like you make all this money, but I was like, first of all, that sounds awful. Like I'm gonna walk this neighborhood, like, when I want somebody to pull my trash can out? When it's raining. When it's snowing, that's when what, you want $2 here. come pull my trash can out.
That sounds like a hard $2.
It sounds like a hard $2. And I'm like, okay, so now you got to go around and collect this money, Correct, I'm like, the math isn't mathing to me. The idea I get, you
And
know.
everybody wants to pay with a debit card now.
Well, yeah. Oh, yes.
So now you got to figure out merchant services as well. And then, really the idea was automatic payments. So you got to figure out how to automatically draft everybody's card every month. I mean, like, it sounds great until you really, like, and there are people that will do it because they don't think about the back end.
They're
They
like,
don't
oh,
think
I got
about
this
the back
great idea. Let's go do it.
Yes, and it's like, hold up. Now you need to think a little bit slower on this. Well, what if you pull it out and they don't pay the next month? So now
Well,
how are you going to get your $2?
Can you imagine trying to collect money from homeowners over, you know what? Well, I didn't tell you to pull mine.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
So now you have to service that because now you're gonna take calls about their $2 that you're taking.
it's
Now it's more than what
the side hustle thing, you know. Well, and I'll tell you. So obviously, being in real estate, there are a lot of real estate agents that get into the business as a side hustle. Or maybe even it's a semi-retirement
right.
plan, right? I'll just sell a few houses. The problem with side hustles is you're, and granted, now we went from trash cans to real estate, but you're never an expert at anything,
No.
right? Can you imagine technically I could go out and get my insurance license and I could hang it at an insurance and I could write some policies, but I'm never going to have the knowledge you have where you spent the last, 12 years of your life in it.
Yes, right.
You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the pros and cons, you know how to navigate the system. And so like that's the problem with side hustles.
And listen, I full-time job, so I'm doing everything I can to be as answer every phone call. Even I miss a call. So imagine if it's your side hustle and you're working a 9 to 5, and then you're talking about real estate. That crap's hard, man. What you do is hard.
It ain't for the faint of heart sometimes. Like
Correct.
you've got to be available. What you're
Correct.
at the point you're getting at.
Yes, and so what you do. I mean, it's your one home you're gonna sell for 6 months. That's not your primary thing. So like you've got this guy who's a side hustle. They're gonna sell their one house. They're not worried. Like they've got their 9 to 5. That's their primary thing. That's how they're eating every
Right.
day. That's how they're making sure they've got their bills paid. You're just is a nice little money. You know what I mean? So it's not this. These things are not the same. They're not equivalent. You know what I mean?
They're not. And I mean I know that there are use my brother as an example. I mean, he's got a good job. He wants more out of life, so he started you could call it a side hustle, but I'll tell you what, he's now working like every day. Right? Like he's pretty darn committed to it. He's already got the payment processing stuff, and like he's done the research. He's this isn't something he's going to do for 6 months and stop. Right. But he's doing enough of it to learn and get better and better, and maybe eventually it becomes a full-time gig.
Well, but he has some skin in the game too.
Yes.
He had some entrance. So like some of these side hustles that have almost a minimal barrier to entry is great, which is part of what you're looking for with a side hustle. Right? It's exciting. Like I can get right into it, but also it means there's no cost to dropping it. There's no cost to stopping. It's like, I'm going to pull these people's, trash cans out. Well, there's no cost to that.
Well,
really.
That's been one of probably the biggest complaints I think long-term agents have about the real estate world and it goes both ways, is the barrier to entry is relatively low. Right? It doesn't cost a whole lot of money.
Nope.
A couple $1,000, what a week and a half, 2 weeks of education.
Right.
You pass a test, and you're now qualified to handle someone's biggest purchase that they're ever going to make. Right. And because it's relatively easy to get into, to your point, it's relatively easy to get out of.
Right.
And so that's why, I mean, what is it, roughly 85% of agents are in and out of the business within 3 years. Like at some point, it's like they're not selling enough. Well, last year, NAR put out a stat that last year, roughly was like 49 or 50% of all agents across the United States sold one or less homes.
Right.
One or less homes. So considering at that time there was like 1.6 million real estate agents, we're saying roughly 750,000 to 800,000 agents potentially didn't even sell a house.
So I have an example of what a problem that can be. It wasn't in Tennessee. It was in Florida. The home was built on piers, so like where it's right on a canal, so it's built high.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they finished the bottom part underneath. So it's in a flood zone. You have to have flood insurance, but because that was finished and there was no permits pulled when they did it, none. There's no way that would ever be covered. And so you're trying to explain that like the realtor didn't check the permits were pulled. Obviously, you could see that the realtor didn't know.
Yeah.
That's an example of like which they should have. That's an example where they should. Now, does it mean you don't buy it? I'm not saying it doesn't mean you don't buy it, but you have to know that. Hey, if something happens, whatever happens down there is on me. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure has flooded sometime since it's been finished. It's at least once.
Well, that's why most of those homes built on piers that downstairs is used for like garage space or
Correct.
like it's not a permanent dwelling area.
Correct. Well, these people finish it off and put a bathroom down there, and how nice, how exciting, which is wonderful, great, but
technically has zero value.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you don't have somebody that knows, that understands what's going on, that's it's not. The insurance agent should not be the one to tell that to them. You know what I mean? As far as that goes.
So I feel like we're going to deviate just for a minute because we're kind of on this topic. But so again, coming back to like to my industry, obviously there's been a lot of lawsuits in the in the space, right? There's been there's probably, I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 of them across the country right now, and some are settling and this, that, and the other. The one thing that this has come from, and it's twofold. One is uneducated real estate agents who provide no service. If there's no service, then there's no perceived value. Again, it comes back to like, what's the point of paying for insurance if it's not going to cover anything? Right. What's the point of? If you pay an agent, if an agent gets paid $6,000 at closing, and you're like, that guy didn't even return my phone calls, right? Like, then they have no value, right? You overpaid, right? Okay. So part of that's born from we've let all these agents in, we let them loose untrained. We were okay with part-time agents. We're as a organization, we're just okay with a lot of this for many, many years, right? Brokers, it's okay if you sell 1 or 2 homes a year because I'm going to collect my monthly fee and a little bit of whatever you do close, right? It doesn't cost me anything else. On the flip side, as a consumer, I don't think there was enough slow down and talk, right? We live in this society of I want instant gratification. This is Zillow's main thing is they call it the customer experience. But what it is we want to provide a moment for you to see what you want, and we want you to act as fast as you can, right? Because
impulsive,
it's impulsive. They want to play on that, all right? And I can show more examples, but so if you're on Zillow and you don't have a real estate agent, you're not prepared. You don't know what's going to happen. You go see a house. You're like, hey, I like this house. I'd like to make an offer, right? Well, now you're entering into all of these contractual obligations. You have one now with that real estate agent you just met, right? Now you're going forward on a home purchase you don't even know what to expect, right? And it feels like it should just be so easy, but it's not.
Yeah. And there's so many other examples. So what we were talking about a home. I said, what about the exterior? Oh, it's a condo. Does it matter? Turns out the home was a PUD, which in case people don't know, that means that you are in a condo. The HOA covers the exterior. On a PUD, the HOA may or may not cover the exterior, but your insurance is responsible for like the roof and the siding of the home and all that kind of stuff. So the guy's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's a condo. Turns out it wasn't a condo. It was a PUD the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like that was a realtor who didn't investigate, and sometimes it's hard to tell. I'll admit that
Well,
there's a confusion on that.
Sometimes the tax records say condo,
Correct.
and it's not a condo.
Correct.
No matter what, you should always be looking and getting a hold of the HOA and looking at the covenants and restrictions and looking at what is covered.
Correct.
By the HOA.
Correct.
But yes, again, if you don't know, you don't know. Well,
you don't say. You say, hey, we'll verify that. Like, hopefully that's something covered. But let's get a hold of the HOA master policy. If this is something you want to do, I'll get a hold of a copy of it, and we'll go from there. That's the correct answer.
And it can't. These things don't necessarily happen in 5 minutes. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, these lawsuits that are out there, the reason why they're there, the main thing that's come out of the settlements is, number one, before you show a house, you have to have a buyer brokerage agreement in place, right? So what does that mean? That means me and you need to sit down. We need to talk about this, and we need to define what that looks like, but you need to be aware of what my services are. You need to be knowledgeable on what this relationship is before we go look at a house. Right? So that one thing alone tells me, hey, slow down.
Right.
So what did Zillow's response to that? They created a simple form, a one-pager that they're offering across the country, and with a disclaimer, it may or may not work for your state because every state has laws. Right.
Which, by the way, the whole lawsuit thing, I don't think really it for the real estate agents, I don't think really applied to Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, we were way ahead of it the game as far as that goes.
Yes, we have buyer brokerage. We've had it since '96. We basically buyers sell a buyer rep agreement. Sellers, it lists out in our listing agreement. None of these lawsuits were in Tennessee, but there were enough states that have varying laws and ways of doing practice. A lot of people don't realize, but even Tennessee, we do things differently in East Tennessee than they do in West Tennessee. Right? So every area is a little bit different. But to my point is, Zillow's bread and butter is selling these leads and trying to, get these deals to close. So they call it a consumer experience, but this form they put out doesn't explain the agency relationship. It doesn't explain duties. It's basically a 7-day showing agreement. There's no talk of compensation in it. So that's making the assumption that somebody's going to go show houses for free. Now, here's the problem.
A scared part-time real estate agent will not educate the client.
Oh, no, they just go out and hope that they're going to do something. It defeats the purpose. Zillow wants to keep the same model.
Yeah.
Because it was profitable for them, right? Well, somewhat profitable. They don't make a whole lot of money, but they have a lot of revenue, not a whole lot of profit. But they want to keep that.
Yes, they want to keep what they can.
Yeah. So instead of changing with what has been coming out, they're trying to hold on to it, and it's frustrating to me because to get professional services, you have to either get really educated,
right,
or B, find somebody you trust that can help you that is educated.
Right.
And that's the bottom line.
Right.
All right. So we'll get off that because you and I I've been in the real estate business since 2006. Right. So I've been around the block. I've held other licenses over time. I've had an insurance license. Yeah. I've had a mortgage license. So I know enough about those to know, number one, they're not easy. Right. Number two, like, there's a lot to it. And I also know, I know enough to know, hey, that makes sense.
Right.
Or that doesn't. Right. And I feel like when I give advice, hey, I feel like you need to talk to this person, or you need to ask these questions, that's providing value to somebody. Slow down, let's figure this out. Here's what I'm thinking, or I can say, hey, that doesn't sound right to me. Right. Maybe we should move on. Right. But okay, but you've been in the insurance space long enough to have seen all that stuff, so you know. All right, so let's talk about living in East Tennessee. You live in an area, Powell.
Yep.
As you mentioned earlier, you've been there, was it 20
years?
20 years.
20 years August.
How would you describe Powell?
Man, it's a great community. It's pretty tight knit. I mean, obviously, it's like most of East Tennessee, where it's growing, and that growth is bringing people from outside of East Tennessee. But I mean, honestly, man, the people moving here, it just they'll side note. I feel like are as much proud of being part of East Tennessee as anything. They're excited to be here. They're leaving where they're leaving for a reason, and they're excited to be part of East Tennessee. For sure.
I've been saying that for some time.
It's been a net positive for the area and for the community. So that's huge, which I'm not from here originally. I was born and raised in Maryland. I grew up on a farm out there. I came to Powell to go to Crown College, and then just stayed because it's great. Let's just say it that way. Then my wife's from Birmingham, Alabama. So we met, she also lived in Powell as well. So we met and got married, like I said, 12 years ago now. Again, in September will be 12 years. And we just decided this is where we wanted to put roots down. Because we love the community. It's growing, it's changing. There's, which you can look at the negative. I prefer to look at the positive, by leaps and bounds across the board. I mean, you go down every road. It's definitely changed in 20 years, yes, for sure. Yeah. Just that spot alone, but we love it.
Good. Sure. So there was something I pulled up the Wikipedia page for it, right. and there were some things I didn't realize. So I'm just gonna read this off just a little bit here. It says, despite its status as unincorporated, Powell is considered to be more of an independent small town than a suburb. One of the reasons behind that is that it was established in 1789, right. 2 years before the establishment of Knoxville. So, Powell is older than Knoxville. I had no idea.
And they're proud of it, too.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So it says so it was basically established by settlers passing through into the frontier. Among these early settlers was I'm gonna probably say this wrong, Stockley Donaldson, a brother-in-law of President Andrew Jackson. So it says Donaldson's home, now known as the Alexander Bishop House, still stands on Bishop Lane. Yeah. Another early settler was John Menifee, a Revolutionary War veteran who built a small fort and trading station along what is now Clinton Highway in the late 1780s. So, man, a lot of history.
A lot of history there.
A lot of history. It's pretty cool. It says the community's name is derived from the Powell Station train stop, yeah. Which was in turn named for Columbus Powell, a prominent local resident. The train station is currently not in use, but remains in the town's downtown area. Yeah. So Powell obviously, it says less like a suburb, more like a town.
Correct.
But a smaller area. Kind of north Knoxville.
Yeah. So downtown area especially is really compact. I think one thing we're talking about the schools there. So there's within it's got to be can't be more than half a mile. There's Temple Baptist Academy, Crown College, Powell High School, Powell Middle, First Baptist Academy, all within just right there on top of each other.
Yeah.
And in that downtown area, and then just a little ways further down every road, you've got the Powell Middle School. So those are all the schools there, and they do identify that. I mean, they've done a great job. But I mean, if you go by the schools, the football field, the baseball field looks incredible. They're trying to do cool stuff with Beaver Creek, the road, so they're kayaking and stuff. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
I'm not.
They've put in a little spot for a landing so you can get in the water there and go. So where I live backs up to Beaver Creek, so it's pretty cool as far as that goes. They're trying to do some stuff like that to that makes it even just cool things that people would like to do.
So you've got your, I mean, obviously you've got children, school age children,
right?
So what's your thoughts so far on your experience?
Honestly, all the schools I just named all are great, and then we're zoned for Bricky McLeod, which I think is one of the best elementary schools in Knoxville. We have a lot of friends that work at Temple Baptist Academy and First Baptist Academy, both 2 thumbs up, highly recommend. And then honorable mention, Grace Academy, or Grace Christian Academy, I believe it's called, is right there. And a lot of people from Powell do go to school there as well.
Yeah.
So it's also a pretty good school. And then again, Powell High, I mean, by all accounts, my kids aren't that old yet. so we don't have to worry about that, but everybody speaks highly of Powell High as well. And I've been there again. I believe it's a good school also.
So when it comes to, so as Powell's growing, like obviously Emory Road we've seen more congestion,
Right.
But that's also where, I mean, you have, you have grocery stores, you have your hospital,
Right.
more and more restaurants. Well, one thing that, I mean, some of this growth has brought as maybe some more options in the food realm.
Yes, there's a lot of. I mean, Scotty's is down in on Clinton Highway. If you guys, it's a great spot. It's just like diner-ish, great breakfast, biscuits and gravy made from scratch every morning. Come in. Yeah, I don't know. I love Scotty's. So that's one spot that's local that I think everybody should go. I mean, like I said,
I've never.
Well, if you're on a diet, I would say probably, but it's pretty good. And then, newer spot, like there's a Mexican place called El Giente. I love Mexican food. I'll smash it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we got there, man. They're like, everybody kept telling me you should go, and it's incredible. So I strongly recommend. That's a local spot. That's not like a chain or anything.
I'm gonna have to, like, Terry Joe loves Mexican food, so
it's good.
Yeah.
You will not be disappointed, sir. I trust me on that. So give it a go. But yeah, dude. I mean, honestly, there's just so many more options. It's again, people like the congestion. I get it, but I just see the positive for the community, as well as homes being built, and not just the big developments. I mean, there's a lot of smaller, like just popping up. This is on my road, East Beaver Creek. There's multiple duplexes being built, multiple townhomes being built. I mean, they just built a huge, I guess probably 60 townhomes right there. So I mean, we need that for sure.
We do. Well, and that kind of comes like, as you know, so my daughter's grown, lives in Murfreesboro now, and so I don't have the raising kids and the sports and the taking the whole family out to eat kind of thing. So we're a little bit different in that scenario. One of the challenges, though, I think, is we've talked about like the rising prices of stuff. Like, I do see it still when we go out to eat, because what we pay now is considerably more. I can only imagine what it's like, when you're a family of 4 or 5, or
Man.
And housing is a big part of that. And there's been a lot of pushback on housing, and that's a problem.
I think people's mentalities need to change, need to shift. So you can't have housing prices moderate, and rents stop going up unless there's more housing. There's more options of places to stay. It will not go down. It will not get better. And I get it. It's cool that there was this farmland here, and it's wonderful. Trust me, I grew up on a farm. I recognize that. But at the same time, like, do you want your kids to still live in this area? Because they're not going to be able to afford it.
They're not, and they're not. There's two classes of people that I think are hurt by some of these, by some of this ideology of if we don't build it, they won't come. Yeah. Right? That's really what it kind of is. If we don't build it, they won't come. The problem is they're already here.
Right.
And they need a place to live. And the two classes of people I think that are affected the most are the elderly and the young.
Correct.
Right?
Disproportionately, absolutely.
And so that's a problem. And the idea of, well, here's one thing that bothers me. We talk about like talking to, say, an expert or an advisor. People who live in the community, what they see is they see more traffic.
Sure.
And they say we don't need to build more. We need to rezone or reclassify. Maybe we need to have it be, instead of 3 homes or 5 homes per acre, it's now 3 homes per acre or 2 homes per acre. Like they come up with this like Or it's like, how'd you come up with that number?
Yeah.
And did you talk to an expert? Maybe talk to a developer and say, hey, what is the repercussions of doing this? What would be the outcome?
Right.
Because the bottom line is higher
Well,
prices.
ask them why they're doing what they're doing in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So like, and it could be, yeah, we're just trying to get the most, houses we possibly can so we can build the most bang for our buck. Maybe that's the reason. But that's that is a reason. But maybe there's other reasons why they're doing it that way. That could be part of it. Or they're like, hey, we're trying to make sure that there's this much. This is what our metrics say. There's so much demand. We're trying to get this many homes built with this land that we know we can get. If we knew we could get more, we might build differently.
Well, yeah. You want builders. Builders are in business to make money.
Correct.
Again, and the problem is if we box them into only building, say, $600,000 and up homes.
Right.
Okay, then what we're going to have is a glut of expensive homes.
Correct.
And still nothing for the average homeowner to buy.
So something we talked about before, it's uncertainty. So if the builders know that, hey, the county is pro growth, and I can build these homes that are like more starter homes to maybe 300 or 250K and under, which is crazy. How far we've come, you know what I mean? Like, but build these starter homes. And because they're pro growth, like I'm not gonna try to get blocked. Then they're not feel the pressure of trying to build the higher end homes to make sure they make their money. So that I don't know. I think I don't know all the odds and ends. I've done some research. I've dug in a little bit, but I feel like that the uncertainty side of things definitely factors into this. For sure.
Again, I think it comes from understanding all of it. Like, yes. More homes, more so than apartments. Single family homes add more to traffic.
Right.
Okay. But again, like people, you want people to own homes, right? I often said you can't be against apartments and development, like new home development. You can't be against both. Like people have to have something to live in.
Which is funny that people are against both.
But they are.
But again, full circle, it puts pressure on. So like our family. So we're in a starter home. 3 kids now. When we bought it, we didn't have any.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe we would want to get something a little bigger. But then you kind of look at it and you're like, it makes the way that everything's going. It makes you want to like maybe we'll just sit tight. Because of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Again, back full circle. We're like, well, I could buy this house at, whatever. There's nothing mitigating the cost that, as far as that goes. So you're only hurting the people that are complaining is like, oh, look at my backyard and I see all this farmland. It's like, well, you've made it. Your kids are all fixing to get out of the house.
Right.
Or are out of the house.
Right.
So you're just happy because you get to sit and drink your coffee on your back porch and look at farmland. Whereas where are your kids going to live? You want to live in your house with you for the rest of your
right.
Like what?
Right. Well,
can you afford it? Buy a house.
Into that point. So like I pulled up on let's see, what is it? Apartments.com, the rental market in Tennessee. It says the average rent is $1,271 a month. The average apartment size is 717 square feet. It says a 2-bedroom apartment on average is $1,492. Okay.
So I rented a mobile home. This is 20 years. Rented a mobile home for $400 20 years ago. Let that sink in, man. Like $400 was what we paid for rent. We pay more on almost more on utilities than we did in rent because.
Well, and the problem is so this is okay. This is the crux of the issue. Now we have people that are seeing all of these apartments being built. Apartments take time to get out of the ground. Okay,
right.
A lot of these apartments are starting to come online, and then we're going to have this supply of apartments. This is actually showing that there's a decrease in the average rent of 0.1%. So not. It's a little bit, but something.
At least it's not an increase.
At least it's not increasing
at this point.
Which Knoxville and you take it with a grain of salt. I don't know how accurate this is or not.
Well, but 700 square feet. That's That's not a family home.
No. That is
A single
it's
person.
a 1 bedroom home is what it's showing here. So a
Yes.
1 bedroom for $1,271.
So think about so most families, you're probably gonna want 2 or 3 bedrooms, at least 2 minimum, right? So that's another. I mean, you're talking. That's expensive, man. We're talking about we're getting up there
It is, and so hopefully with the apartments coming online, it creates enough inventory that maybe it chills out the rental prices. But then the problem is, so like, okay, so yeah, you're in 1 bedroom apartment. You want in your economy, you want people to form households.
right.
You want them to again buy and own home and become homeowners in the society,
Right.
in the community. How do they get out of that apartment that they're now paying essentially a healthy mortgage payment?
Right.
I mean, if you're paying $1,500 a month, that's a chunk of change,
No doubt.
right? So how do you get them into a house if you're not building
So
those homes?
exactly, dude. And so like you're talking about family. I mean, it's you're just you're giving. You're not giving by like you're not going to form a family if you're not going to have a kid if you like I can't buy anything, I can't do anything, I can't grow, I can't what it's a net negative. Part of the reason why we love East Tennessee or why we stayed here, versus either. I mean, Alabama is a pretty good state, I guess, overall. I mean, besides the fact it's so freaking hot, man.
Yeah.
Alabama, it's like yuck, dude.
And,
No.
and besides, it's Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say roll tide. Anyway,
But you did.
and they do frequently to me, So let's just say it that way. So anyway, so Maryland is so expensive, versus it's not. I'm like, I don't want to go back there. Like
Yeah.
I just didn't, whatever. You're just like, okay, this is a great place, and it still is a great place to have a family. I think people need to realize part of what made it positive is that there was that growth aspect, and I think there's maybe it's growing so fast that there's some shock to it. I think
There's
for
definitely
sure.
shock.
So I understand that, and I especially people that have lived here their whole lives. They've lived here 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. I mean, I can definitely feel where they're coming from. When Kingston Pike was nothing. Like you see the pictures from 1965. So I understand where they're coming from for sure. I think, however, they need to realize the growth is a positive, a net positive.
Well, there's only two ways a community goes.
Right.
It either grows in a positive direction or it declines.
Correct.
And there is no stagnant. There is no, well, it's just been this way for. I mean, Knoxville's been in growth mode for a long time. It just accelerated quickly.
Right.
Right. Quicker than I think anybody expected, and so it's hard because I don't think we're having the conversations we need to be having openly. The developers. One thing that's changed a lot over the last, well, I mean, since 2008 is we used to have mom and pop home builders.
Right.
We used to have neighborhoods. It used to be feasible for somebody to develop a neighborhood and sell lots. Okay, that doesn't happen anymore.
Man.
One of the few places that still kind of goes on is like Tellico Village.
Right.
But Tellico Village is going to be built out before you know it.
Yeah, and we're talking what, probably the average home price 700 and something K.
It's in the sixes.
Yeah,
it's in the sixes. The struggle is like you now have the way homes are built now are a developer home builder scenario. You have your D.R. Hortons, your Smith Builts, your Saddlebrooks and Ball Homes. Like you could literally name off I think every home builder, and they buy a chunk of land and clear it and build.
It seems like in that community, the memory is long. So like I knew guys that lost their shirts in 08.
Yeah.
They built houses. They had houses built. They just bought one lot, and they were, like you said, and they had to hand 3 houses back to the bank.
Yeah.
I mean that hurt, bro.
Yeah.
That hurt. So they're they're slow to get back into the game, so slow, which I feel like, I don't know. I don't think we're in, no matter what happens, whatever the worst case scenario is, whatever you could think of, we're not in a position for another '08.
Oh no, and that's a mistake. A lot of people, trying to time the market, trying to take advantage of what was going on, thinking, I've run into a couple of people that either they did it or they told me a story about it. And I had a neighbor who sold their house in 2021 because they felt like that was the height of the market, and they were gonna come back in at the bottom, right? Well, all that happened was his homes got more expensive and interest rates went up. So, like, now they wish they would have kept their house,
Correct.
right? And so there is the only way the housing market can crash, and this is the exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
In '08, well, in '07, '06 and '07, new construction starts were the most they've ever been. Okay, we were building at a rate that was unprecedented. Okay,
Right.
and after '08, that dropped like a brick. It stopped,
Right.
and then it's never regained the same momentum.
Again.
If you hear about places on the news, if you hear like builders offering incentives and stuff, just know that here, not so much. In places like Texas and in Florida, where they have the ability to build at a rapid pace, they have built, and builders know now, hey, we're starting to create too much inventory. They're not moving as fast, so they slow it down. They
Right.
throttle the production.
That may be the only positive about the D.R. Hortons and the whatever.
Well, 'cause they can
do
control.
They have the analytics.
Yeah.
Which is a positive. If whatever other negatives we can say, that to me at least is something. So they're not like we're not gonna see another crash like that. There just isn't enough inventory.
There's not.
You have anywhere in the country.
You have to have inventory, and the fact of the matter is, most of the people who own homes have a ton of equity.
Right.
Okay, so even if prices were going to come down, if you bought a house pre 2020, then you probably have at least $100,000 in equity, at least minimum. And then so like you have that cushion, like you could sell that house.
Right.
At a quote unquote loss and still possibly walk away with a check.
Right.
So again, very different scenario for the young person in today's world. Like that's kind of the direction I kind of want to go is, or look at these stats. Like I shared with you before the podcast, this info, what do you call it? The picture with all the, infographic, I guess they call them. That's what the kids are calling them these days, infographic. But it has all the states, and it says, it's titled The Income a Family Needs to Live Comfortably in the U.S. And for Tennessee, it says, and this is based on 2 working adults with 2 children, it says that you need to make $196,000 as a household income to live comfortably in Tennessee. Now, first of all, that's a shocking statistic.
Right.
But the other part about it, what's crazy, like if I'm a young person, this is, as you were kind of saying, like this would take all my hope away. Right. Because how hard would it be to make $196,000, especially when the median household income, so this is a 2021 statistic, but it's $44,000.
Yep.
Right? So even if that's up, let's say it's 75,000, that's a long way away from 196.
Right.
So the problem with some of this stuff, one, is don't just go based on what you see, because right. Tennessee is vast.
Right.
We have three main sections. You have east, middle, and west. Memphis is its own thing. Yes. Nashville is its own thing.
Right.
And then us along the mountain areas are our own thing.
Right.
And so the cost of living here is very different than it is there.
So exactly. So what you don't, 196,000 doesn't necessarily mean that's what you need in Knoxville, Tennessee, or Powell, Tennessee. Let's be even more specific. That to live comfortably. You know what I mean? And let's say it that way.
The median sales price in Knox County, or in our area, I shouldn't say Knox County, in our general area is still around that let's call it between 340 and 350,000.
So here's another thing I want to say real quick, because I had some friends that talked like younger. So I'm closer to 40 and they're closer to 20. So, as far as that goes, and they're like, man, we're never going to be able to buy a house, or never going to be able to have, whatever. And I'm like, as long as we don't do anything stupid, this will not stay. It won't be like this forever. We've seen this kind of thing before.
Yeah.
We will get through it, and you will have an opportunity. I as long as we don't say no more building, we don't become anti-growth inside of the county. That this focus on regional, and then there's some national politics type things that as long as we don't do stuff stupid, this too shall pass, and things will be okay. I feel like people, like young people, are like they keep acting like there's no hope, and I'm like, there is hope. It will be.
Well,
there's cycles,
There are cycles, and I see this a lot with especially people who, let's say you're renting an apartment, and you're like, oh, my lease is coming up, so I'm interested in buying, and then they do a little research and they go, oh, I can't do it. So what do? They basically hang their cleats up, and they wait until the next year rolls around when their lease is about up, instead of so they're not being proactive in the meantime.
Right.
They're not watching rates. They're not watching housing prices. They're not making sure that they're prepared to move when the time comes.
Right.
And talk about stability. One thing I've noticed is when interest rates go up, obviously, home purchases tend to retract. Yeah, people stop applying for loans and stuff when interest rates tick up. But when interest rates stay the same for a period of time, applications pick up, showings pick up. So stability in the marketplace makes a difference because people know what they can afford.
Right.
They know what's happening. What I like to tell people, because there's a young fella at the bank where we bank at, and he's been first time home buyer. Him and his wife, they've been working with another agent. I don't know why, but I joke, I kid.
Get right, guy. Watch this and change what you're doing.
I kid. So, but he was like real defeated. He was like, man, my rent's this, but to buy a house, like it's actually it's not a nice house. Like they need work, they need all this stuff. I said, hey, look, here's the deal. Number one, don't give up. Right? Like no one ever said buying your first house was easy. Right? It is a major investment. The second thing is like if it's not now, continue to plan like it's now. Like continue to save, continue to get your debts in line. Like be proactive and make it happen.
It shouldn't be easy. You're borrowing anywhere from in a home in Knoxville, Tennessee right now. The lowest you're probably going to possibly find is $250,000 to $450,000. That should not be a just walk in, hand me the cash, and walk out process. So it shouldn't be easy. Number one. Number two, there is, like I said, there is hope. You've just laid out. Just even if things don't change, that's a process that you can go through and be prepared and buy a house. So it's like, but even then, like my bigger point is things are going to get better too. So you do what you're supposed to do now, and when things, you'll be even more prepared.
You will, and so like people talk about like, is now a good time to buy a house? Like timing the market's the worst thing you could do, because you'll always miss the curve.
Correct.
Right. So is now a good time to buy a house? And so the typical stereotypical agent would say it's always a good time to buy a house.
Right.
Well, no, that's a very personal question and answer. Is now a good time for you to buy a house? Right. So, because the reality is, there's not a bad time to own real estate. Like you should always own real estate. You want to for many, many, many reasons. If I'm maybe I have too much debt right now. Maybe it's not a good time to buy a house because you need to pay off some debt so that you can, one, get the house you want, and number two, like you're not paycheck to paycheck, right? Like it needs to be the right time for you.
Hit the nail on the head, bro.
And so the reality is it's not, like you said, it's not instant gratification. And we live in this world, like I said, the Zillowification of housing. People think I don't need a real estate agent. I can just go on an app and buy a house. No, if we get to where you get on an app and buy a house, we have problems.
People are going to be making some very bad purchases.
But bad purchases, bad decisions. It's not an impulse buy.
Yes.
It's something that should be well thought out. It should something that takes time. You should be able to sit down and list out, these are the things that are important to me. Like, I'm not going to buy a house unless I have X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And if I can't afford X, Y, and Z now, then I need to do this plan to get there.
Yep, exactly, dude. So nail on the head. I think that's a positive message that people should take away in this exact moment. Now things are getting crazy expensive. Trust me, and kids are crazy expensive, and things that are around kids are crazy expensive. It seems like having a kid is crazy expensive. That's outrageous, bro. It's crazy.
I heard there was a stat floating around, and I don't know how long ago this was, so it may have gone up a lot, but it was like having a child is like, what was it? You're gonna like spend? Was it like $250,000?
I totally believe. I mean, each one of our kids I guess our deductible is $5,000, so we paid $5,000. The first one, the medical billing, kept applying the payments we were making. You get a new, because you get a dozen bills. You get more than a dozen.
Yeah.
You get tons of bills. It's like a new bill comes every day for the same event.
Yes.
Can't you guys just put this all in one thing?
I wish they could.
And it's like, come on, they make it a lot easier on me. So we would pay. They would apply the payment to the wrong bill, and then they would try to send us to collections, and we were like, oh no, we pay it. Here it is, or whatever. So 9 months goes by. Maybe it was 10, and they send us a bill for like $1,500. And we're like, nah, man, here's all the stuff we paid. And they're like, well, let us do research. And then we 11 months go by, and they send us a check. We had overpaid by like $1,000. And we're just like, and my wife's like, what do we do with this? I'm like, we cash it. And any other further communication, we send a lawyer, like nothing else, not one dime getting paid, man. So it was, I mean, it's worth it though. So back for it's worth it to do that. So it's an investment. My kids are an investment for me. Obviously they're great.
It is. It's not easy.
Not easy. So the same deal with a house. I mean, a house isn't as awesome as kids, but it's an investment. It's not easy. It's an investment you're making that's going to appreciate in value. That's going to help you in long term, and it's going to be your home. So these are all positive things that you can do to get that.
The saying that I like to say is so renting, paying $2,000 a month to rent an apartment's not easy either. Right. So both are hard. Yeah. You have to choose your hard.
Right.
Which hard do you want to have? If you rent an apartment for the bulk of your life, the statistics of wealth between a homeowner and someone who rents is the difference is massive.
So I think it changes your mentality. When you buy a house, not only is it appreciating value and gaining wealth that you can use for other things. Obviously, other things. Not to say take money out of your house often, but it's possible.
Yeah.
There may be situations that you would want to take that equity and use towards something that can be wealth building, for sure.
100%.
But also it changes your mentality. I feel like in a lot of ways.
Well, it does. And so most people, when it comes to owning a home, what most people talk about is they talk about, you're paying down your mortgage, right, and you're potentially getting appreciation, right? So there's this gap. My home's becoming worth more, and the amount I owe on it is becoming less.
Right.
But the one thing most people don't take into consideration is when you rent, you can be guaranteed that rent is typically going to go up.
Always.
Right? So inflation goes up, rent goes up, right? When you have a 30-year fixed mortgage, inflation goes up, your house payment stays the same. Right? As you get a raise over time, your house payment stays the same. So now you're creating that gap between like all of a sudden your payment actually is considerably less than what it would be if you just went in today and bought or just got an apartment.
So what you're literally saying is hopefully in 25 years you're getting paid what you the appreciation of 25 years of your income. So like you said, you got raises, you've improved, you've moved up in your job, whatever. But your housing payment is what is like you took a time capsule or time travel back, and you're paying a housing payment that's 25 years
old.
ago.
Yeah.
So like you're
so
it's
that's
huge for you.
Yeah. So as time goes on, you have more disposable income that you can either A, invest, B, go on vacations with. Like that's something people don't. So that's why that question of, is now a good time to buy? Well, yes, it depends on your scenario. The longer you own the property, the better. So, was it the Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree? It's 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
The second best time is today.
Right.
Right. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but it plays out.
Yeah, and the other side of that is too. So like, and people are like, oh no, I bought a house in '08. It really was a bad time, and I'm like, oh well, did you sell like the next year or when? Like, no, we kept it for 8 or 9 years, and then we sold it. Well, then you didn't realize the loss. It wasn't a bad time at all. It was actually perfect. In one sense, because you had a house during all that time, no big deal, whatever. You had a place to live, and you were able to sell it 9 years later.
Again,
no loss was realized.
Time in the market, it's impossible. It's always because we're always looking at stats that have already come out, right? The best bet is just to make a plan for yourself and to get in it,
right?
Because it will impact you over the long run.
And the other side, people worry like, oh, what if it's down? It's like, man, if like I said, because there's no inventory. I mean, there's literally the amount of inventory is so low. I mean, I think we finally are getting. You mentioned a stat the other day of how many thousands of homes in 13 county area is finally maybe approaching normal. Maybe
we're still below 2019 levels, but like I said, as interest rates go up, demand cools off some, which allows some inventory to build.
Yeah.
And so like, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but if I were to give somebody a hack, and this is a Warren Buffett one, he says to buy when everybody's selling, and he says to sell when everyone's buying, right? So as inventory increases because interest rates are high, now may be actually a good time to try to find a home that you can maybe negotiate a better sales price or negotiate some closing costs because you have less buyers in the market.
Right.
And then potentially, rates should come down at some point.
Yes.
Right? And so at that point,
goes back to us if we're going to do stupid things. Hopefully, the rates will come down.
Rates will come down at some point, and you will be able to, ideally then refinance. That was one of the sweet things about our house. We bought it in December of 18, had a 5.25% rate. We refinanced, I don't know, 2021, 2022, somewhere in there. It was probably 21, and got a 3.25%. Payment went down $600 a month. I don't know anybody else's paying, like you can't do that in an apartment.
So, and then like kind of get to there, saying goes, if we do have an '08 housing crisis crash in this market presently, there's a lot more problems in the housing market, and it doesn't really matter. So you might as well bought the house, at that point. So
you're gonna have a problem whether you live in an apartment or in a house.
Yeah, if it's as bad as like, because there's so many things that have to go wrong. So my point is, like, people are like, oh, I'm worried. It's like, I wouldn't worry about that. That's not something that's the least, I would not put that in fear at all, man.
I'll tell you, I think you and I, we could keep this conversation going for a long time because there's so many points to it. Right. But I will say, so like, just to recap some of these things, number one, Powell is I think it's a beautiful place. It's still
a bunch of homes coming, so guys, come on in. Let's go.
And it has it has that still has that small town feel, in the community. The biggest part, what makes a small town feel is it charm? Yeah, sure, it's old buildings and charm and all that. But really, what makes a community is the people.
Right.
And the people in Powell are awesome.
They definitely are, man.
And so that was great. Obviously the insurance side, if you're thinking about, obviously buying a house, or if you're looking to get into some sort of trade, or you're in the trade, you're listening to this and you're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you being on the show for that. Right. Definitely. What's the best way someone could get a hold of you?
phone is great. Give me a call anytime. Call or text. Some people just like to text nowadays.
Do
They're like,
you want to drop your phone number right here?
865-205-9699.
There you go.
Anytime.
There you go. Or you can check them out on Meridian Insurance has a website.
MeridianInsurance.com.
Yep. And you can find. I found your face on that website, so you can look up Jared Davidson. And
there are worse pictures on the internet, but not by much. Not by much.
So yeah, good stuff, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you, man. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. Signing off. We'll catch you next time.